We are live. I'm outraged, episode 7, and really excited about this episode because I get to bring on a guest this week who's kind of been in the fantasy space as long as I think I have. And he's featured on a podcast with me at least 2 different times, I think. And I'm very curious to find out if he's featured anywhere else up to this point. Because again, he's a talented guy. If you follow him on Twitter, you know, he can definitely drive some people crazy with the statements that he makes. But he's been right a hell of a lot more times than I think he's been wrong. Let's bring him on right now. Mr. Fusue Vue, live on camera. We've got him, tonight. Thank you for coming on, my man. How are you doing?
Hey, Nate. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great to be here. Excited.
It's you now. We talked off air. You know, you mentioned, you know, you don't do a lot of podcast features. In fact, the last podcast feature that you believe that you did was with me and probably Matt Kelly on the Sonic Truth. Is that a fact?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a long
Probably
time
like
ago. I mean, it's crazy to me though that you're a super talented guy, like a creative guy on social media, you know, well thought out, have good takes. Why is nobody beating down your door to get a Fusue interview? Do you get a lot of people that reach out to you and ask you to do a feature?
There's been a few, you know, but I unfortunately I just had to turn them down because, you know, it's not really my thing. So, but you
listen.
know, but for you, you know, we got a history. We go back, so you know. I enjoy.
We do have a history.
Coming on and talking with you.
Listen, it makes me feel so good that with the hundreds and thousands of podcast propositions you probably get a week, you said yes to this show, and I'm really excited because there's been a lot of landscape changes, especially in Dynasty with the new rookie classes coming in. We look at the rookie class from last year. It proved to be pretty exceptional. 2022 is looking like another great class as well. Some guys have fired or are getting opportunity already, while other players that maybe you and I, or you specifically believe are talented players that maybe aren't getting opportunity, are starting to have people sort of turn their back to them and say, yeah, maybe this guy isn't it. Maybe this guy isn't going to fire. But before we get into some of that, I wanted to ask you a couple questions. And by the way, for you guys that don't know Fusue Vue, you can find him on Twitter. Now, his handle used to be a lot easier back in the day, but now it's at Devi, and then it's Fusue backwards, right? So it's ESU ESEUF. Did I get that right?
EUSUF.
At least you know how to do it. I have no idea.
Yusuf.
So it's
just pronounce it Yusuf.
Yusuf. Okay, yeah. If you pronounce it Yusuf, you might get it right. You've got about a 4% chance of getting it right. So before we jump in, I want to say I want to jump in and say, hey, what's up to everybody in the chat? Fusue, just let you know, if you can see these popping up on the screen, we got a lot of people on here that are really excited to see one. Oh, so you're doing it on a cellular phone. So Fusue's got to lean
I gotta
all the way in, put on the binoculars from a distance. So yeah, man, it's really cool to have you on, and I'm really excited to talk about this stuff. But before we jump in, so you and I have a whole show sheet. We put a bunch of names. We took a bunch of names for 2021, a bunch of names for 2022, and we said, hey, let's just put them head to head. Doesn't have to be necessarily like the craziest debate you've ever heard, but maybe, you know, what player do we prefer, or what do we kind of see in the long run with these guys? But with your history on social media, Fusue, you have had some of the craziest calls. Now, you habitually, year over year, post your rankings at whatever position is, at quarterback, at running back, at receiver, at tight end. And you put it out there, okay? You've got balls. Listen, I don't have balls. My rankings aren't usually out there. They're ambiguous, right? Like, they're in the dark. And you've made some bold calls in the past. You've ranked guys in positions. I believe Leonard Fournette may be one of the most notable in history. In the draft class with Leonard Fournette, remind me, where did you have Leonard Fournette ranked amongst that class? Was that one of them?
I think so. It was probably like 10th or something.
Okay. So, but okay, now to be fair though, for
something.
the few misses, you've had some really bold calls over the year that have been successful. Can you remember a couple of the calls that you've made, whether good or bad, that people were like, you're ridiculous, you don't know what you're saying, and then they came to fruition, or maybe you just showed so much conviction and then it didn't work out?
Bad was Jaylen Rager, wide receiver one. Yeah, people still give me hell for that, but a lot of people, a lot of smart people I know had Jaylen Rager,
Yeah,
wide receiver one. So,
you didn't go down on the ship alone on Jaylen Rager. There was lots and lots of people prominent in the industry that believed in him. And, I always wonder with guys like that, is it the player or was it the system that they went to? I mean, based on everything that you saw with Jaylen Rager, I mean, like, in the simplest form, what do you think it was that was the causation of him not firing? Do you think it's where he went?
I I think there's always a lot of factors, but with Rager, probably he did kind of decline his junior year, and maybe everyone as a whole kind of overlooked that.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
possible. He got a lot of hype, and there's a lot of teams in the NFL that probably regret, taking particular players throughout history over other guys that definitely fired. And I know Rager was one of those players that, despite the school that he came from and the level of competition that he faced, I think a lot of people were willing to overlook that for the sake of a talented player that can make big plays, got the draft capital, and just didn't fire Fusue. So I want to jump into some of these questions with you, but of course, we always have to start the show with an email.
You got mail.
So this email, I'm assuming is going to be directed to you. So let's find out what the story is with this, Fusue. It is directed to you. What a great guess. Subject is, this you? It says, I would trust Fusue with my firstborn child. So when I saw this, I instantly put him on the block. Signed, Fusue's disciple. You got some people that really believe in you, apparently. There was an attachment, so let's see what it is. Let's see what it is. Oh, okay. This is pretty recent. This is actually from yesterday. It says the sell window for Dameon Pierce has opened.
Mm-hmm.
Dynasty, of course. Now, before you express your thoughts behind that Twitter take, where were you on Dameon Pierce coming into the season after being drafted in the 4th round and going to the Texans?
well, he was one of those guys where if he had landed in a good situation, then yeah, you probably could take him, maybe the second, but even the second, I thought that was kind of high because his profile wasn't really that strong, but his tape was great, but then again, he was a part-time player, so you have to wonder, okay, was he efficient? Because he only got like 5 carries a game, and he stayed fresh, so that could have contributed to it, and you don't know how he's going to handle like 20 carries, 15 carries, a bigger workload.
I mean, historically, I've talked about this on this podcast, and I've talked about this with other people, but, historically, guys in the 4th round, it's more difficult typically for those guys to fire, short of an opportunity like Houston, where you end up in a backfield where, I'll raise my hand, admittedly like a fool, I thought Marlon Mack had any chance in hell, and clearly he didn't. But that backfield was so soft that the potential did exist. But then we see the Burkhead thing, and Dameon Pierce finally gets his opportunity. So in your tweet, you say that the sell window is open. If you own him, are you moving off of him? I mean, that tweet obviously alludes to that influence, but are you moving off of him?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. But I mean, like if you overdrafted him, then you might not get what you spent, so you might as well ride him out. Like if you took him early second, like late first, because I think I was looking at sleeper ADP and he was going like early second, I believe. But there may have been some people that took him late first, so you're probably not gonna get like a 2023 first for him. So I think you're probably gonna have to just ride him out to make it worth it.
I mean, if you, there's still time, obviously, and there's still people that believe in him. I mean, are you shocked when you hear that people thought that he was supposed to go before Breece Hall in rookie drafts? I mean, there are screenshots of people taking him before Breece Hall in rookie drafts. That's like how crazy the hype got around him. And I mean, you look at last week, 20 carries, right? 101 yards and a touchdown, 18 fantasy points per game. And clearly that's why you're like, look, if you wanted to get out from under him, sell now, because that was at a 60.7% snap share. So that's starting to crest above average with a lot of these committee backfields that exist. So as somebody that has been anti-low draft capital since the beginning of time, I'm with you on it. I don't really own him anywhere, and I sure as hell didn't rank him above Breece Hall in any number of rookie drafts now or then. So, yeah, I'm with you. It was just good to see you say it, because I felt like the Fusue disciple. I was like, when Fusue says it, I'm going to do it. So it was nice to see us kind of in lockstep. So listen, man, the reason that I really wanted to get you on the show this week was to kind of talk about some of the things that you've seen. I know that you've got some thoughts about guys like Treylon Burks, guys like Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, looking at the more deep metrics, the man versus zone coverage, how many times does this guy actually run versus man? What does being successful versus man mean, right? So a lot of these things come into play, and I think despite the fact that with some of these players we're seeing immense air yards, they're coming against different coverage types that may be lending themselves to more benefit versus some other players. But let's start pitch and catch. We're going real easy here. Look, it just adjusted you in the frame. I want to start with an easy one right here. This is Kadarius Toney and Christian Watson, right? So Christian Watson obviously dealing with some injuries. We've got other players, other rookies in that offense that are kind of ascending, Allen Lazard. And then, of course, we've got Kadarius Toney, a guy that's just not really fired since being in the league whatsoever and appears to be getting lapped. Between these two guys, is there one you prefer versus the other, or are you hands off completely with either one of them?
I prefer to be hands off on both, but I'd probably side with Christian Watson just because, just because Green Bay must have really liked him to take him as high as they did, like mid second.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you on the Christian Watson thing too. If it's between these two guys, I mean, plus this is a guy with a 90th percentile college dominator, elite athlete, has 18 pounds on Kadarius Toney, and Kadarius Toney's also already having issues. I think they realize now that he's probably not going to fire, and now they're just scrambling to figure out what to do. I mean, do you feel like that was sort of the selection with the Wandale pick, or are you a Wandale fan?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Wandale Robinson fan.
Okay, all right. So definitely. I mean, is he the guy that obviously of these two players then you prefer him to Kadarius Toney?
Wandale?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. He's kind of like a similar, but it seems like he's got a better head on his shoulders. Seen pro ready. He's tearing up camp, getting first team reps. So, but he's injured now. So I was gonna say, well, he's healthier, but not really.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the problem though with Kadarius Toney? I mean, I know Kadarius Toney on film is this really shifty guy, and that's what everybody loved about him, right? Like at Florida, he's like phone booth, ability. Just he can move in small spaces. But this is also a guy, using playerprofiler.com, hamstring strain, shoulder strain, oblique strain, quadricep contusion, ankle sprain. He has missed so many games already. Like, when you're missing this many games and you're a guy that's not, a 210-pound wide receiver, and the expectation is that you're going to be a guy that they can get you into space and you're going to create, if you're constantly injury prone and you're not reliable and you can't be active on the roster on game day, teams are only going to hold on for so long. I mean, shit, this is a team that has Kenny Golladay, and they're ready to throw the fucking towel in on this guy on every given play. It's like, right? I mean, is there anything worse than being the New York Giants with Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney right now?
Right. That says a lot if you can't play over Kenny.
Yeah, he's not getting the start. So I'm with you. My question with Christian Watson, though, knowing that Christian Watson was a raw prospect in many senses, that he did have the athletic profile, that I do agree that Green Bay did go and reach for him in essentially the same spot that we saw T. Higgins go a couple years ago, right? T. Higgins went, I believe, the 201. So you had that whole night between day one into day two. The Cincinnati Bengals could think all night on what they wanted to do. Did they want to trade the pick? Did they want to make a selection? And I believe T. Higgins was the first pick coming out. Was it Pittman or Higgins? Am I getting this wrong? Can we get a score check on this? It was T. Higgins. No, it was Higgins. Higgins was 201. Nobody in the chat's out here saving me, man. No, so it was T. Higgins, right? So he goes at 201. The Bengals had this opportunity to really think through the pick, and that's who they went with. Now, conversely, here's Christian Watson at 202. It's a very similar situation with Green Bay. They could have done any number of things on draft day, and they went with him. My concern, of course, is what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, because I don't know, but we have other players in this lineup. So are you fearful on behalf of Christian Watson, if we talk about a guy like Romeo Doubs? Is this a guy that, do you believe, if you had to talk and you had to select between those two guys, who are you more enthusiastic about right now?
Oh, I'm more excited about Doubs than Watson.
Interesting. And was Doubs a guy that you were a fan of coming out of college?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, as a junior, I thought he was a really good deep threat, showed really good speed. So he probably made his quarterback Carson Strong, because Carson Strong had a lot of hype, but
yeah. I think you're absolutely right.
Look good.
Well, and speed is overrated, right? I mean, you would agree with that statement that we've seen time and time again, that being the fastest wide receiver on the field doesn't necessarily equate to fantasy points. This is a guy that at his pro day ran a 4.5, but 80th percentile breakout age, 63rd percentile college dominator. So clearly has the tools, and Aaron Rodgers is favoring him. I wonder if even by the time Watson gets healthy, like that favoritism and that confidence with Rodgers, knowing that he doesn't really have weapons around him this year like he has in the past, if maybe he continues to lean on him. I mean, if both these players are healthy, would it surprise you in the least if Romeo Doubs was the guy that was pulling down a 23% target share, while Christian Watson was the guy that was looking at 15 or 16% despite the draft capital?
I think Romeo, he's gonna be the top dog between those two.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I like it. I think.
But looking at the rest of the Packers receiving core, I mean, I think Watson could still be a number two, or it's possible for them to be on the same level. But I'm leaning Doubs because he just looks a little bit more ready.
Yeah, no, I get you. I mean, we saw what he did here just last week, right? I mean, 8 catches, 8 targets, 73 yards, and a score. I mean, so really impressive. And that Rodgers, that stuff matters to him, right? How many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers upset with a receiver that ran a wrong route or wasn't where he needed to be or dropped the ball? If you've got a guy that 8 for 8 is catching the ball, running an 88.5% snap share, I mean, it's hard to believe Aaron Rodgers isn't a fan of what's going on. We had a great question in the chat, though. This is from that tall guy. He said, can Rodgers still sustain multiple fantasy weapons? I mean, do we think that we're getting to the age where maybe Rodgers is incapable of that with this running back duo, this tandem that we see? Or do you think that there's still some life in Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I think Rodgers will be fine. I think though he could probably maintain like 2 wide receiver 2s, or like 1 wide receiver 2, another wide receiver 3, to that level. Yeah, because it's early in the season. They've been like kind of checking down a lot of short routes. So hopefully they run deeper routes and open up the offense a little bit more.
And to your point, Aaron Rodgers over the last 3 years in Green Bay has ranked no less than the quarterback 13 in pass attempts. So with the efficiency that Rodgers provides, with the ability of this running game to continue to move the ball downfield, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if these two players are capable enough that Aaron Rodgers could sustain, like you said, 2 wide receiver 2s or a wide receiver 3 and a wide receiver 2. I don't think that's crazy at all. I don't think that's insane whatsoever, but I love the take on Doubs. All right. Oh, we got to pop that one off. This is a way, the level of production that this show requires, Fusue, is so ridiculous. I mean, I can't tell you how much time I spent trying to prep this goddamn show for you. Look, everybody in the chat, man. Obviously, huge fans of Fusue in here, man.
What's up,
It's
Zari?
so great to see it, man.
Oh, what's up, Smith?
And then we got people all over the place. So really excited to have you on. And again, for those of you guys that are just checking in, Fusue has not been live on a show for, I don't know, it's been at least a year since the last time we were together.
Last time it was recorded. Last time it was recorded,
yes,
but this time, this is live ever.
Yeah. So this is different. So like you and I talked about, right? You know, it's not nervousness, but it's like, okay, I haven't done a podcast in a while. I'm going live. There's an audience. And like you said, when you're on social media, and we'll get back to this next question, when you're on social media, like you said it to me off air, you're just kind of talking to yourself, right? I mean, people love your style, but is that really how you view what you're doing online?
In a way, yeah. I'm just trying to put information out there. You know, people don't have to, they don't have to care about it. It's just me. It's what I think, my convictions. So it's not to, it's not to direct it at anyone in particular. It's more like, it's how I feel. You take it or you don't take it. You don't like it, you don't like it. You like it, you like it.
Well, you know how it is. A lot of people don't always like it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So let me ask you this: you used the word convictions, okay? And I know that there's a player that has been hurt, that's losing some of his snap share right now. And I want to test your conviction right now with two wide receivers that I would love to ask you about. Oh, this is not the one I was talking about. So this is totally different. I spoke out of turn. This is typical. I cycled the show on us, so I screwed us up. So here's a question for you. Elijah Moore with Garrett Wilson in town. We don't need to talk about Garrett Wilson yet because we're going to get to Garrett Wilson. Or George Pickens. When you're looking at these two players, 2021 class, 2022 class, obviously we've seen more from Elijah Moore at this point because he's got one full year ahead of him. But between these two players, if we're looking down the line, both are going to have young quarterbacks, both have competition on the other side of them for targets. Which of these two players do you think you prefer long-term?
Long-term, I'll take Elijah Moore because he's just a little bit more like well-rounded and more polished. And someone posted on Twitter some of his route running from last game, and he juked a DB off the line, so and his production in college was stronger anyway. And last year when he was playing with Zach Wilson, he was Zach Wilson's number one target.
Yes.
So I think the future looks bright for him.
Well, that's the thing too, and that's been cited a little bit. We look back at the year prior, and currently right now, 14.9% target share. Right now, 18.6%, but we know that target share is not really indicative of the early part of the season. We saw it start to trend up more towards the second half of the year when he was saying 3 to 4 more targets per game than he did on the early half of the season. But I'm with you. Everybody is a fan of Elijah Moore. And, you get a guy like Garrett Wilson that comes in and suddenly the competition around him is certainly much more significant than when the only penalty was Corey Davis. But do you feel like going from Joe Flacco back to Zach Wilson is going to be a benefit overall? Because we know that Joe Flacco has been targeting the running back position at an insane rate right now. So when things swing back the other way, if you prefer Elijah Moore, then that must mean that you have some confidence in Zach Wilson. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a combination of I'm confident in Wilson, and I'm not too worried about who's going to be at quarterback. Yeah, and Zach Wilson he wasn't really checking down last year when he was starting anyway. So so I'm not too worried long term.
Okay, well, and he's coming back, and one of the things that I had written a couple articles on Patreon, patreon.com/I'm Outraged, and I wrote one over there about Elijah Moore as a guy that to me was a buy low when we were looking at his first couple, even to this point right now. You look at what he's done this year. He has not ranked inside the top 45 wide receivers. He has not had a double-digit game yet, and to me, that was a guy that was a total buy low considering where he had come from, where he's at now. This is a guy that was a great route runner versus man last year. We know that looking at Zach Wilson, he was great versus man coverage last year. So there are combinations and reasons why I believe that Elijah Moore will continue to sustain and be a great weapon in this offense. And I think that Garrett Wilson does actually help him. I know that for some people that feels counterintuitive, but for the same reason that people might prefer T. Higgins to Jamar Chase or Jamar Chase to T. Higgins. I know there's a battle out there. There probably shouldn't be. If you're afraid of one player cannibalizing another, but you still have preference of those two guys, or you want to call those two guys top 5 dynasty wide receivers, then very clearly Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson should get a similar level of treatment. I realize they don't have Joe Burrow, but being two talented players and on any given day, either guy can play well, should probably keep them afloat. But you've mentioned Elijah Moore. What are your thoughts on George Pickens? Because my belief with George Pickens is that his ADP probably shot up solely on that catch that we saw last week.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I liked him, but not to the level of whatever hype he was generating. Like at one point he was offensive rookie of the year favorite.
Right.
And yeah, I think people probably fell for that.
Well, yeah, I think that that's probably right. You have that. You have the guy that's making these monster plays, in the preseason and in practices. But what people forget is that currently, I was looking at Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson right now is on pace for 198 targets. Okay, he got paid in the offseason. And he's not going anywhere. Like Deontay Johnson's not going anywhere, irrespective of what you believe with Chase Claypool, what you think the upside is for George Pickens. We are going to usher in a whole new quarterback into the situation. And the one thing that I know for certain, looking back at a guy like Kenny Pickett, is that Kenny Pickett had arguably the most time to throw, or he was in the top 3 of draft eligible quarterbacks his last year at Pitt. And he had time to throw, but he's not a guy that's necessarily airing it down the field per se, even though I think he was top 17. Deontay Johnson is in that sweet spot. So with Johnson in town garnering as much target share as he is, what are the odds that we see the version of Pickens that people hope ever in the future?
It's probably very slim because, he still has to compete with Claypool and Fairmouth. And, yeah. But I don't think those guys are going to be duds. So
right,
it's going to be Deontay, the number one guy, and everyone else just gets scraps.
I think that that's totally fair, because where we're expecting a guy like George Pickens to survive down the field is also a place where, we don't know if Trubisky is going to, be able to successfully deliver. I know right now we're actually seeing Trubisky ranked number 1 in 2022 in deep ball pass attempts, which is kind of a shocker. But his deep ball accuracy is number 24. I kind of feel like we're having flashbacks to Big Ben, where Big Ben would throw it downfield, but he couldn't hit the fucking side of a broadside of a barn to save his life towards the end of his career. So the question is, can Kenny Pickett do it? And I'm just not sure. And I kind of feel like George Pickens is probably getting more hype than might be deserved, because people are discounting that Deontay Johnson is as good as he is and has been as good as he has been to this point in time. So, I mean, that's my take on it. Clearly, I think we both agree we'd prefer Elijah Moore in this case over George Pickens. So I don't think anybody would necessarily argue with that. Now, this one is going to drive some people crazy, though. This is going to be the one that's going to bother some people. Now, when you, because I don't have them in front of me, when you had ranked this class pre-draft or post-draft, let's go post-draft. Who was your wide receiver 1?
It was Burks.
Okay, so it was Burks. Where did you have London ranked? Was London in the top 2?
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a 2. So
that's
like
in a tier.
Okay.
Like the next tier, it was more like a tier. The next tier was like 3. London, Wilson, Skyy.
Well, I mean, and that's pretty high praise.
Yeah, not particular number.
Okay. Well, that's fair, because like your belief is that Burks is probably the best player in this class. And I alluded earlier to the idea that there are some players that that fans of fantasy football maybe think are not going to fire because the opportunity hasn't swung their direction yet. The pendulum hasn't gone their way, and we're going to get to Burks. I know Burks is your hot button topic. But between these two players, we've now seen Jaylen Waddle for a year and 3 weeks, and he has been absolutely exceptional. And we have seen Drake London for a handful of games to this point. Of these two players, if we're making projections into the future, you had to own one in Dynasty. Who's the guy that you prefer here?
I'm going with Waddle.
I love it. I'm with you. I don't think that's
Waddle.
crazy. I know there's people in the chat right now that that are going to say Waddle or they're going to say London. I'm with you on Waddle. Do you prefer Waddle because of what we've seen already? I mean, you have questions that have been answered, or is there more of a reason why you prefer him to Drake London?
I'd say it's a combination of what we've seen and what he was in college, the kind of efficiency he put up in SEC.
Yeah, well, listen, I feel like this is going to ruffle some feathers. You know, you look at, to me, Jaylen Waddle was a no-brainer for me coming out of college, especially the way that he was, he was underutilized in 2021. We saw it, and I tried to scream it from the rooftops, and I'm sure you were on board with this. His ADOT was not indicative of the player that was coming out of college, right? And since then, in 2022, we have seen his ADOT rise from a barf-worthy 6.3 last year to 10.3 this year. And that's no surprise because we already knew that Tua Tagovailoa could sail the ball downfield. It was just a matter of giving him time, putting weapons around him. But this is what I'll say about this. Unlike Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Hill and Waddle can produce in tandem. Because when you look at T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, it doesn't work out favorably for both players on the same week very often. Have you ever looked back at their production one for one?
I think, yeah, it seems like they kind of exchange big games.
Yeah, no, and they do. So, you look at those two guys, and even up to this year, we're seeing it again. They had one game where they both finished top 20 last year in the regular season. And Jamar Chase, and we're gonna talk about this here in a minute. Jamar Chase, surprisingly, is that volatile receiver, right? He puts up a 40-point game. He could put up a 30-point game. He could put up a much lower game. And people always say, well, if it's between the two players, give me the Tyreek Hill. Give me the guy that's going to average, 17 points, where he's going to have that big game. Don't give me the guy that's the floor play, where I feel like Waddle has proved that he is the ceiling and the floor, and I just don't know that Drake London is going to offer the same ceiling. Would you agree with that?
I mean, I think his I think his floor is probably safe
Drake London?
because even yeah, because even early on there, he seems to be like regular part of the game plan, meaning like they're calling specific plays for him, and he's like, uh, the first read. I think I saw someone post that
Yep.
London was like, one of the leaders in the first reads on pass plays.
And it's true.
Yeah,
And I mean,
but
well, and the Kyle Pitts thing, right? Like Pitts' opportunity really hasn't come
mhm.
his way yet. And I was talking about this the other day. They've got him blocking at a 14% rate. He blocked at like a 2.3% rate a couple years prior. Kelsey hasn't had to block. Andrews hasn't had to block. You take this guy with this supremely high draft capital and you're asking him to block. It's absolutely crazy. But when I look at London, man, London is the wide receiver 4 right now overall in target share. And that's got to surprise the crap out of people because that's something that we can't ignore. If targets are earned, a target share of 32.9% is pretty unbelievable. And him being your number 2 guy in the class, I mean, do you believe that it's deserving and that this guy will continue to flourish and be the primary option in this offense despite having Kyle Pitts here?
I mean, week 3, we saw it swing Kyle Pitts' way, so I think Pitts eventually kind of evens it out more, or I think Pitts overtakes it because I just personally I think Pitts is a better player. But I think, London could try. probably going to still be above 20, maybe settle in at 24, 25. So yeah, he might not have like an absolute ceiling of like a top 5 player right away, but I think uh, you know at the edge of top 12, definitely.
And look, I don't want to come off like I'm speaking poorly about Drake London, but guys, I think what we're ignoring is the fact that last year Jaylen Waddle was already a top 15 wide receiver on low ADOT. Imagine this. Jaylen Waddle last year averaged 15.4 points per game and was hardly given an opportunity to do what he does best, which is lift the lid on defenses. And now with Tyreek Hill doing the same thing. Okay, last year, he had 10 deep targets, which was number 61 in the league. He has 3 already. He has 3 right now. So we have a lot of football left to play. He's going to blow right by that number. And when I talk about his ceiling, that's what it's indicative of. I think that we can continue to see a guy like Waddle really stretch defenses and be successful with a guy like Tyreek Hill stretching them as well. But what's interesting about Drake London, and had you talked about his targets versus man coverage? Was he one of the guys that you had looked at on this whole man coverage tirade that you had gone on?
Oh yeah, because I've been looking at the numbers weekly, and so he's barely run any routes versus man. I think like
yeah. I think they say he's got
maybe,
two targets versus man coverage right now per PFF. 2 targets versus man coverage, which to me was really surprising. I mean, do you think that's a product of them just trying to get him into space and give him opportunities early on in his career to kind of like sort himself out?
I think it's just it's a combination of the play call and what the defense is playing. So basically they're not like respecting him. They're gonna give him all that underneath stuff. They're not gonna press him like a Jamar Chase.
Right.
But Jamar Chase right out the gate, his first game, and early on they were pressing him.
Yep.
He was pressing like college too, so that kind of carried over. So like in my mind, like if you're like a real alpha, real threat, teams are gonna play man. They're gonna press you.
Yeah. Well, so. And with London, and this is kind of an interesting thought because I noticed this with Justin Jefferson the other day. These guys that were dominant slot options in college, A.J. Brown, Elijah Moore, Justin Jefferson, all of which play outside at the NFL level, which is very interesting because for a long time there was this concern. It was like, oh, he's primarily a slot guy until Justin Jefferson took a 99.8% slot share and just crammed it up everybody's ass because he's like, it doesn't matter. I'm dominant no matter what. But what's really interesting is we saw Drake London run over a 90% slot share for his first 2 years at USC until his final year when he ran 11%. But that versatility at the NFL level is really important because the other day we actually saw Justin Jefferson, while playing Philly because of Darius Slay, kick into the slot for 54.9% of his routes. That versatility, I believe, can protect his floor on any given week so he doesn't have to get savaged by a defense. And I realize that we've seen Jefferson have a couple struggles being bracketed as maybe the only option, but that versatility which London does bring to the table, I think is still really important. So I love him. It's close, but I prefer Waddle. You prefer Waddle. I don't think that's crazy at all, even though maybe the chat thinks it's crazy. All right, here's one. I'm going to get your juices going with this. This is yours right here. This is yours. We'll see what the crowd thinks about this one. We've got Treylon Burks versus Rashod Bateman. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a big fan of both of these players coming out of college.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like Burks a lot and Bateman.
And Burks is your number one guy in this class. Now, I would imagine that Jamar Chase was your number one guy last year, right? You had Jamar Chase. Okay. Do you know that there's people that, because I know that you've ranked guys in spots that people are like, what the hell is he doing? How is so-and-so here?
Yeah, but this is But this is Jamar Chase.
Okay, but this is Jamar Chase. Yes, I know. I agree.
Yeah.
So yes. So, okay. So then clearly you didn't have Bateman number 1, but Bateman was probably pretty high in that class. It was a guy that was a good athlete, had the production advanced metrics that we really, really do love. But between these two players, now, I've alluded to this so many times already. Burks has not necessarily been given the opportunity, though he is running the routes and he's getting opportunity on the field. The targets haven't necessarily come his way. What's the expectation between these two guys 3 years down the line? I'm much older. I'm in my 40s. I don't even want to admit that on this show. 3 years down the line. Which guy do you prefer?
Same here.
Same here? You look so much younger than me.
It's just the camera. Nah.
Okay, go on.
No, I'll take Burks.
Interesting. So
I'll take Burks.
you will take Burks. Why do you prefer Burks? A guy that we haven't. This is your opportunity to kind of air out your philosophy behind Burks. But why do you prefer Treylon Burks, a guy that we've basically not seen yet, that has had some hurdles, via the tone, the vibrato from Mike Vrabel, versus a guy like Bateman who we've seen coming on pretty strong, and Marquise Brown packed his bags up and left. Why Burks?
Yeah. I mean, Bateman, I think his snap share is kind of low. He's not playing like 100% of the snaps too, so I'm kind of, I'm curious what's going on with him.
Yes.
Haven't heard much about that. But Burks, well, I mean, I think their production, their yards per route run or yards per team pass attempt, it was kind of similar, but Burks, he did it in the SEC, so I give him the edge to that, and his weight and his speed, it's like 220, and he could hit like 21, 22 miles per hour. So, and I think his team situation is the receiving core. It's not, he doesn't have like a Mark Andrews on the team, and Andrews is just going crazy. So I mean, Bateman's kind of have to eat into that because Andrews' target share, air yard share has gone up. So that's what Bateman has to compete against. And Burks, at least last week we saw him on the field. He just has to gain confidence of the coaching staff. So, and it's the kind of coaching staff where they're probably they don't care much about young players. They're going to be really hard on them and really make them earn, as we've seen throughout the preseason, all the chatter and everything Vrabel says publicly. It just sounds like Vrabel doesn't have anything nice to say about Burks. So, but it's probably just him, Vrabel, trying to teach him how to be a pro. Well, but, I mean, he may not put up 1,000 yards his rookie year, but I think next year is where he could really he could really blow up in the second year.
So, and it's interesting because Vrabel is a great example. The guy that's from that New England Patriots, earn every opportunity, lineage. Remember Taywan Taylor? And you remember Tajay Sharp? Well, Tajay Sharp buried him. And this was a guy that had draft capital versus a guy that really didn't. And we're kind of seeing a similar thing, taking place there. But when I look at these two players, what's interesting, again, Treylon Burks had a 77% slot rate through 3 years at Arkansas. So again, a slot guy who obviously was a deep target or a short target. No, not so much in the middle of the field per se, but electric after the catch. Through his first 3 games at the NFL level is running a 16.7% slot rate. So it's really interesting that the league has decided, look, these guys, they're valuable. We can play them inside, we can play them outside, but they're so versatile. But I got to ask you this question. This is really like my hobby horse theory on this. You ready? If we were both on an edible, this would blow your mind. Okay. A.J. Brown was the player profiler best comparable player for Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks looks like A.J. Brown on player profiler. A.J. Brown played with Ryan Tannehill, the quarterback that Treylon Burks is playing with, in the same exact offense that A.J. Brown was in. A.J. Brown had one season of note, but otherwise was underutilized or couldn't perform despite the fact that he's electric after the catch, a great route runner, very nuanced, does all these great things. So riddle me this. If he couldn't do it in this situation, how does Treylon Burks, coming out of college, literally airdropped into the exact same situation with the exact same quarterback and the exact same coaching staff and the exact same philosophy, overcome what A.J. Brown, a player that all of us that deem elite, couldn't?
Well, I mean, when I say he's elite, I think it's more like, from an efficiency standpoint. But I think from fantasy wise, like at the end of the day, maybe he doesn't reach that, top 12. But, things could change quickly, and Tannehill could get replaced, so the coaching staff could get replaced, and, there's a brand new quarterback, new offensive system. So I think I'm just siding with the talent here.
The other thing that kills me is one thing that really hurt A.J. Brown was the fact that, and this is what we loved about Treylon Burks, is that Treylon Burks can take the top off a defense. He can make these big plays. Well, over the last, I believe it's the last 4 seasons, Ryan Tannehill hasn't ranked any higher than the QB 24 in deep ball pass attempts. So it's not like Tannehill's really airing the ball out either. And it's not to take a crap on Treylon Burks because I really like him. I just feel like the situation is not as juicy as people want it to be. We look at the Titans. Ryan Tannehill, besides A.J. Brown, didn't really have guys that were great after the catch. So what do? They go get Robert Woods, who's been elite after the catch for the last couple years. They go get Treylon Burks, who's probably the best guy after the catch in all of college football. And so I think the plan is probably to get Burks in space as soon as they understand that he's the best receiver on this team, and they should be doing that. But I think I'm with you. I think my concern with a guy like Rashod Bateman is that right now, Rashod Bateman is averaging 5.3 targets per game. And by the way, just to remind you, Marquise Brown is gone. Okay, Marquise Brown doesn't play for this team anymore. He's averaging 5.3 targets per game, which is actually down from the 5.6 that he saw last year. And then we look at what his production is this year. And a lot of it, as I saw mentioned in the chat, has been buoyed by ultra efficiency and touchdowns. And that's where a lot of that production has come from. I mean, he's averaging 2.54 fantasy points per target. That's fucking insane. Okay, you can't bank on that. You cannot bank on that level of production week in and week out. And this is a guy that's still running, what's his snap share right now? You had brought it up earlier. I believe that his snap share currently is the wide receiver 61. So 67, a 63.3% snap share in an offense that got rid of the former number 1. But from what we've seen, it's hard to make a case against Rashod Bateman because his ADOT, the deep targets, the performance after the catch, all do directly point at him being a star. So if we were to turn up the dials on both players, if we could turn them both up to 10 targets a game, you still prefer Treylon Burks with either Ryan Tannehill or, God forbid, Malik Willis over Rashod Bateman?
Yeah, I'll take Burks.
Okay, that's a tough one for me. Now, I might eat plates of crap in the future for this. I'm going to continue to lean Bateman. If they turn the dial up, I think we've seen some special things from him. But to your point, Burks was your wide receiver 1, so this was probably a trap question from the beginning for you. So that's bad on me. That's bad on me. All right. How about this one right here? We've got Smith versus Williams. We haven't seen Jameson play yet. DeVonta Smith, a player that I had my concerns about just solely based on what he did last year. Concerned about A.J. Brown coming into town. Now Brown is there. Similar to kind of what we're seeing in Miami, 2 very talented receivers kind of thriving in tandem potentially. And then on the other side, we've got Jameson Williams, a player that I can't remember if you were high on or not coming out of college, but similar players in their own right. Who do you prefer here? Again, let's look forward a couple years. Who would you rather have?
I'll go with DeVonta.
So you're going DeVonta Smith here. And are you concerned about the role for Jameson in Detroit, or is it just the profile of DeVonta Smith overall for you?
It's just the profile and what he's done so far. Yeah, because he's healthy and we've already seen what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, my big gripe about him last year, here was my big gripe. He was solely used as a deep threat in 2021, right? I thought he was going to be a possession guy. I did not think that we were going to come in year one and just try to air it out all day to him, which is fine because that's where those big points lie. But what was crazy was he averaged 1.7. I believe it was yards after. Was it yards after the catch? 1.8 yards after the catch last season. That's like falling down. You get 1.8 yards when you fall down with the ball. So that's not shit because I think Jamar Chase was averaging like 6 or 7 yards after the catch. So to me, that was really killing me. But then we look at him this year, he's averaging 3.5. But as everybody in the chat knows, maybe they don't. In week 3, he had a 45-yard catch, which attributed to a bunch of yards after the catch, which buoyed that number. So I still don't know if he's good after the catch. Is he good after the catch? Is he? Do you know?
I mean, if no one touches him, like at Alabama,
right?
It was just pure speed, but
So what you're saying is, if it's an open air stadium and there's a breeze, you might want to be concerned about the yards after the catch. Yeah, I mean, I think that with him, I imagine that this can, for him, it's going to normalize over time. It's a good sign. Because last year he only had 6 total catches that went for greater than 30 yards. But his 24.6% target share rate right now is more than sufficient, in my opinion, to be a top 20 producer if he's delivering explosively, if he's getting the downfield targets, if he's getting the ball in space. I still believe that 24.6% can get you there because that's within 1% of Chase, Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle. So it's not like he's being underutilized per se, but from the standpoint of Jameson Williams, you've got Amon-Ra St. Brown right there, and we're going to talk about him, so let's not go into it too much. But with Amon-Ra's like immense target share in that offense, are you concerned that maybe what we see from Williams is more of an explosive playmaker that's stretching the field versus a guy that becomes a possession? Like, is he going to be a DeVonta Smith light from what we saw in 2021?
Yeah, I think he's going to be more than like a deep threat. He's from Alabama. He went to Alabama, so he's got some pro readiness to him. So yeah, I think we could look at how Detroit is using Chark and Reynolds. We could probably look at that as a model of how they're going to use Jameson.
I mean, they took him with a really high pick. I've had confidence. Okay, look, and I was going to admit this later. I'll still probably do it over again. But look, I had to bend the knee to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Okay, it was a huge mistake on my part. The way that I treated Amon-Ra St. Brown all offseason, that's bad on me. Okay, that's my mistake. How in the world does a guy come out and just absolutely shred everything? And then in my mind, I was like, well, it's because everybody's hurt, right? This is what we saw with Travis Fulgham. That Travis Fulgham really, for me, was the tripwire. You know, in the woods when you want to like catch somebody, so you dig a hole and you just put some leaves over it. Travis Fulgham was my leaves over a hole. I fell in that thing and was looking up from the bottom of the hole like, no shit, this was a bad idea. And I think that I had attributed that to him. So my concern is, with Jameson Williams, like, as long as he's going to be utilized all over the field, I love him. If he's just going to purely be a stretch type receiver, then I'm more concerned. But I think that I'm on board with what you're saying here. Of course, I'm going to do whatever it is that you say, but you look at what we've seen from him so far. He's had no less than an 88% snap share. Over the last 2 weeks, his targets have been north of 7 per game. 2 top 25 finishes in a row. Despite having A.J. Brown there, I think that there's a world where Jalen Hurts has gotten so much better that these two players can thrive, and they each offer a skill set that's a little different from one another, where I feel like Tyreek and Waddle have some similarity. I feel like what we're seeing with Smith and A.J. Brown are so different. One guy's so great after the catch, and they're both nuanced route runners, so it's dangerous for any defense, but I just like in tandem how great they can be. So for you, it's a no-brainer. You prefer Smith versus Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ja Webb in the chat. I used to try to pull that booby trap. I hope. I'm curious if you ever caught anything. Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous tactic to just dig holes in the woods. All right. Let's go with this one right here, Fusue. Next question. This is a good one. Amon-Ra St. Brown or Garrett Wilson? Now, as a diehard draft capital snob, admittedly, if you would have had these two players into the league last year together, I would have up and down said Garrett Wilson. I'm sure just about anybody would have. But hindsight being what it is, and seeing Amon-Ra St. Brown just absolutely shredding the league from the slot, by the way, of these two players, again, getting in our time machine going forward a couple of years, who do you prefer? And please remember that this is going to be locked on the internet forever.
Oh, I'm going with Garrett Wilson.
Oh,
No
shit.
question. It's not even close.
It's not even close. It's not even, I got to do that. I'm going to run the nuke.
It's not close. Even with what Amon-Ra has done.
I had to run it. I told myself I wasn't going to run this, Fusue, but it's not even close. Oh, I just lost it. Hold on. We're going to bring it back up on the screen. See, this is a programming error. This is when I get to these positions, man. There it is. Go ahead. Go ahead. Preach.
Oh, okay. Oh, I said that. No, even with what we've seen from Amon-Ra, I still prefer Garrett. Yeah, he was just a much better prospect, and just through the 3 games that we've seen, his usage, his target rate versus man versus zone, like, he could kill man, kill zone. So,
Oh man.
yeah, and his ADOT's a little higher too, so he's not like a check. He's not even used like a check down on 5 yards or 6 yards like St. Brown. So I think that upside, it's much higher.
I'm with it, man. Look, I'm with it. It feels bold to say it right now, right? Like it feels kind of dangerous to say that you prefer anybody to Amon-Ra St. Brown because the mobs are out there. Everybody's. This has been one of like the greatest opportunities for the gotcha game, I told you so community to come out and just start taking wiffle bats to people because, look, I admitted it. I was wrong. Okay, I was absolutely wrong on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I need to address the nation. This is my camera. I was wrong, and I apologize. We covet the slot position, right? I do in fantasy football. It's proved to be a very valuable position. Juju in the past. That's why I like Juju now. Cooper Kupp. A lot of these guys have been very successful from it. But he's entered the year with a top 8 target share, top 10 red zone usage. But I would agree that the ceiling between these two players, to me, is what's so vastly different because Amon-Ra St. Brown has proven that he can perform at the NFL level. He can be a solid route runner. He can beat coverage types. But he is playing primarily out of the slot. So it is a different form of production. And if you believe that Jared Goff is a good enough quarterback to make him relevant, then you must certainly believe, and I'm speaking to everybody generally here, that Zach Wilson is plenty capable of taking a guy with the talent level of Wilson and making him great because Wilson is clearly an alpha type receiver, whether people want to accept that or not. Is that true? That was a hell of a time to take a swig of water, Fusue.
I think so. Sorry, you're.
I'm kidding. You're good.
I was too slow.
Yeah, that's all right. No, you're not too slow. No, I think that you're right. I think you're concerned with Amon-Ra St. Brown being that, and this was my argument again with the whole Waddle thing. Like, give me the guy with that versatility. Give me the guy that can perform in really big games because even when we go and look at Amon-Ra St. Brown, if we look at his production, I mean, how many of the outings that Amon-Ra St. Brown has? I mean, you look at last year, despite really having big performances, he has 2 games that were over 100 yards. The biggest game that he had went for 111. This year's biggest game went for 116. Jamar Chase is putting up 200-yard games. Julio Jones had a 300-yard game, right? Like, I don't think that Amon-Ra St. Brown's outcome is going to be yardage like that. And, of course, it always comes on the backbone of 12 targets and 13 targets and 14 targets. So, for you, is that the biggest differentiator? Because I know that I I had sort of, spied on your page recently, and I saw that you had responded to somebody with an article that talked about, I have to do my homework, that had talked about sort of the corollary of predictive nature to players that are successful versus man coverage. And Wilson is a guy that we're seeing versus man more than all the other rookies. Is that true?
Yeah. He's been I think more man versus zone than compared to London and Olave, which are like only 10% or something versus man so far.
Right. No, I'm with you.
So he's been tested.
I mean, and this was something that we saw from him even in college, right? This is a guy that currently, because we love Chris Olave, and we haven't gotten Olave, and I swear to God, people are going to lose their minds when they see the Olave question. As people are doing the math on 21 versus 2022, they're like, okay, wait a minute, who's left? And it's getting dicey. But when you look at Wilson, this is another guy that had slot usage in college. In 2020, I believe he ran a 73% slot usage. In 2021, it went to 17%. So he's really versatile. And then we saw him in week 1. This is my argument for Justin Jefferson. And I think this is what good players can do. Week 1, he ran a slot rate of 32.4%. Then in week 3, you know what his slot rate went to? I'm going to give you a hint. Higher than Amon St. Brown has ever run. In week 3, he ran a 79.5% slot rate in week 3. So the versatility and capability that this guy has, where they can lock him inside, they can lock him outside, he can stretch the field deep, he can do all these different things, makes him very exciting. So here's the real question I want to ask you. This is, to me, where the hot take might come in, because I don't think it's a hot take to say you prefer Wilson to St. Brown. The only hot take there is we haven't really seen Wilson fully produce quite like Brown has. Should Amon St. Brown be in the conversation as a top 13 dynasty wide receiver?
Nope.
Okay. I mean, there it is.
That close.
Not okay. Wait. What was the last? You said not close?
I don't think he's no.
So
he's probably more like, he should be closer to 20 than 13.
Fusue, you're going to get so much hate mail for this episode. I feel like I'm watching you tweet right now. This is you on Twitter right now. I appreciate it. You're loose right now. I'm with it, man. I do like it. And here's the thing. It's really difficult for me to say he doesn't deserve to get in there. I guess my question for you is, I keep trying to go down this rabbit hole to solve where you are on this. For Amon St. Brown to not be in the conversation of top 13, that means that his production has to fall off. So what is the trigger that causes his opportunity to decrease enough that we start to say, oh, he's in that tier with a McLaurin, he's in that tier with a, Deontay Johnson type maybe, or what happens? Because he's currently being targeted at such an immense rate right now, that it's hard to imagine there being a scenario where he does actually fall back that far.
Yeah. Well, right now his ADOT is like 6 or something. 6 point something.
It's low. 6.6.
His yards after catch is like he's going crazy right now. So you gotta think, is that gonna fall? He's having, maybe for the whole year he's gonna be great, but maybe next year it falls a bit down. Because last year his yak ability wasn't as good. So he's just having one of those years where he just physically he's just everything's just going right. And yeah, so Jameson Williams is gonna get healthy, so we know Jameson is gonna eat into the target share. So he has to maintain the target share and the yak ability, because that's what he's living off, the yards after catch right now. So unless his ADOT goes up, which I don't think that's gonna happen, because I just don't see him as that kind of player.
It's not going up. And to your point, I can see, look, I see the vision. I see the tunnel vision, because to you, it's like, all right, Jameson Williams is going to show up. he's going to get some level of opportunity in this offense. He's likely going to. This is a team that right now is number 15 in the league in pass attempts. So he's going to show up. He's going to take some opportunity. St. Brown really doesn't stretch the field. So where we love Wilson because he's got that ability to do that, or we like Waddle for those reasons, he's capped on how big of a performance he can get. So if for some reason that dial gets turned back to 7.5 targets a game, which is still a respectable amount of targets, I think it puts you on pace for about 120, 125 targets, then suddenly he's a guy that's averaging, probably 14.5, 15 fantasy points per game. And you're suddenly going, look, he's not getting the opportunity. He's not electric after the catch. He's not a guy that can burn you downfield and turn it into a big play. So suddenly we're going, well, why the hell did I sell the farm for him? Because I had a guest on last week, Rotosurgeon, which I'm sure you follow Kev. And Kev basically said that it was, to him, was a no-brainer that Amon-Ra St. Brown was to be ranked there. And now I'm just caught in the middle because I don't know where to be because he's performed so well. But similarly to Rashod Bateman, for me, it's like, well, if they just turn the dial up on Bateman, we're all wish casting, right? But nobody reverse wish casts. Nobody goes, what if it gets turned down on Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? And to your point, I think that's fair. So I think that there might be a little bit of a bubble there. Maybe top 13 is a little too high, but Fusue, we're talking about guys like Cooper Kupp. We're talking about guys like, who's up there at that age group? Stephon Diggs. We got some 27, 28, 30-year-old guys. So I'm going to let you have this one. I'm not going to push too hard on this one, but I think there's some people out there that would disagree, and not on necessarily Wilson over Brown, but the fact that you think that St. Brown maybe isn't to be ranked in the top 13. Now, before we move on to the next question, Joel in the super chat gives us a let's go. Thank you, my man. Appreciate the donation.
Thank you.
Always do that. I appreciate it, you guys. All right, so Fusue, let's move to the next one. I'm going to get to this one because this is the real grenade. This is the real shit bomb. Chris Olave or Jamar Chase. Now, Fusue. Oh, buddy.
Come on, man. Is that a misprint?
No, that's not a typo. The guys in the producer of this show said, we're doing this. And I said, you're fucking crazy. And he goes, nope, we're putting it on the show. So I put it on the show, Fusue. Now, before we answer this question, too bad our cameras aren't synced up, because I'd say your answer on 3, because I'm pretty sure it's the same thing. And if it's not, people are absolutely insane. But Chris Olave's air yards and opportunity have suddenly vaulted him into a scenario where people are truly considering him as this elite asset. Now, admittedly, this is an unfair question because there is nobody to compare to Jamar Chase. That tall guy, this question is disrespectful. I know it's disrespectful. So, Fusue. All right, let me ask you. Jamar Chase or Chris Olave? Take your time. You can think about this one if you need. Who's it going to be? Yeah, take your time.
Let me use my lifeline.
Do it. Phone a friend. Hopefully they know what they're doing.
It's Jamar Chase. No.
It's Jamar Chase. Okay, and by a mile, right? But with that being said, obviously you would agree this is an unfair comparison from the start.
Mm-hmm.
But of the players that we named, is there anybody else in this class when we're doing this 2021 versus 2022 exercise that you could put next to Chase? I mean, I'm sure you want to say Burks, but knowing that the crowd's going to yell at us and the listeners are going to yell at us, who?
Maybe Wilson, but based on what he's shown, but I don't think I'd put him on Chase level.
Right. And I agree. But I think the reason that this came up too is right now we've got Chris Olave as number one. So over the past few weeks, Chris Olave is lapping the entire NFL in air yards. And that's kind of where this came from, right? He has 443 air yards, which is number one in the NFL. And of those 443, 90% of them have come in week 2 and week 3. 90% of the number one air yardage production in the league came in 2 weeks. So in 3 weeks, guys couldn't do what basically he's doing in 2 weeks. Now, this is what makes Ja'Marr Chase so special, which we kind of alluded to. We don't necessarily love about Amon-Ra St. Brown's profile, which is these big play opportunities. Not all of them are going to connect. That's why he's also number one in unrealized air yards. But when they do connect, this is how you get a 170-yard game out of a guy like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because he's running a ton of like deep routes, like 20+ yard kind of targets. I mean, it's going to be high variance, but he might have big weeks, but he might have some duds because he's kind of been mostly a deep threat instead of more like a combination of like a number one receiver where you're getting like those cheap short targets and some of those medium targets.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is his biggest games. So when you look at week 2 and you look at week 3, in week 2, he was running a slot rate of 30%. That's when he had his biggest game, which had a insane ADOT of 24.6, which is very Ja'Marr Chase-like. And just last week, while running out of the slot, only 11.6%, again, had a very big week when we look at air yards, but a 15.3% average depth of target. He looks like the clear downfield weapon in this offense, and I think that was going to be pretty obvious from the beginning with with Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas in this offense. We knew that they were going to engulf the short area opportunities. So this is a question for you. With Chris Olave, thinking about evolution, what we've seen from Jaylen Waddle from year 1 to year 2 with the difference in offensive scheme and capability. Olave is kind of a stretch receiver right now, but we know that he can do more than that. If Landry leaves, if Michael Thomas, God forbid, because my whole brand is built on him, goes down, when that short area opens up, if that slot ability finds itself more available, do you think we're going to see him running different levels of routes, some shorter area opportunity, or do you think that he's a guy that may remain exclusively kind of a big shot, deep threat player?
Yeah, he's probably gonna start getting more possession routes. If in the future Thomas or Landry isn't on the team. But
right.
I think overall I don't really see him as a top 5, top 12 kind of guy, traditional alpha wide receiver 1 type.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on it. I think, again, unfair question here, but I think Olave is sort of surging up to the top of this class. And with Ja'Marr Chase, though, I've got to bring this up because there's some crazy stats that I dug up. So everybody in the chat, hold on to your fucking hats for this one. Chase, on the other hand, when we look at him, he's still being utilized as he was before. On the year, 300 air yards, which is actually up 10 air yards a game from what we saw from him in 2021. So believe it or not, he's actually got more air yards per game than the year prior. But the thing with Chase that we have to realize, much like Julio Jones, is we are going to get variance. We're going to get significant boom performances, and we're going to get some performances that might not sort of deliver. And I mentioned this earlier, in 2021, him and Higgins had one tandem top 20 finish. And in fact, when we look back at 2021, only once did Ja'Marr Chase have back-to-back weeks of top 15 or better performance. Believe it or not, only once did he have back-to-back weeks where he was top 15 or better. You can look that up. We only talk about facts on this show. So with me, it's like with Higgins in line, it's just tough for me. Obviously, Ja'Marr Chase is a monster, but right now, you look at Chase, he's got 16 more targets than T. Higgins on the season, and he only has 13.5 more fantasy points, right? That's another shocker when you look at those two players. So I think the biggest difference here when looking at Chase versus Olave is threefold. One, Ja'Marr Chase is tethered to Joe Burrow, and we don't know what's going to happen in New Orleans, right? We don't know what the future is in New Orleans. Number two, we're seeing what we wanted to see from him last year, plus we're getting a bump in the targets. Last year, 7.5 targets per game. This year, 11.7 targets per game. I mean, I can remember last year being like, holy shit, why don't they throw the ball to Jamar Chase more? He's like a cheat code, and now they are. He's up so many targets. And here's the last point I'll make when differentiating these two. Who's to say that T. Higgins is in Cincinnati in 2024? Because that's the exact same year that they have to pay Joe Burrow. Is there a world where you believe T. Higgins might not be in Cincinnati in 2024? Or do you think they're going to try to keep this tandem together for a very long time?
I think they're going to try to keep the tandem.
Okay, they're not going to split them up. Look, I don't disagree with you. It makes too much sense. You have arguably the two best receivers in the league running, opposite of one another. So why not give Joe Burrow all the weapons in the world, especially if there's any chance that he's going to get some big play opportunity? Look, I'm going to give you one more of these because there's a guy I want to hear you talk about. This probably wasn't the greatest combination of two players, but I'm going to go to it anyways because I've seen you talk about him a lot. It says Pickens and Collins. What the hell? The graphic never updated? God damn it. This show. Fusue, are you muted right now? Did you mute yourself, Fusue? Are you muted? I can't hear you. You're not muted on my end. We have some phantom mutings on this show too. Can anybody hear? This might end up being a solo broadcast brought to you by Gillette Razors. The best a man can get. Look, I've been using Gillette razors for at least the last 20 years of my life. I don't know what's going on with Fusue right now. We lost him mid-broadcast. I'm not sure. This is a dangerous situation. I don't think that's how you check your microphone. I'm not sure if ending the broadcast altogether is the way to check your microphone. Yeah, he was muted. I don't know what to do. I think he got so frustrated that the names were wrong at the bottom of the graphic that he just stormed out. So, yeah, he did. He muted himself laughing at this question. Well, hopefully I can get Fusue back on here. This is so crazy right now. Well, this is a first on the show. I might have to bring someone else on here to play the game at the end because I had so many great questions left. Hold on. He's DMing me. We're live. We're going to do this right now. He said his phone froze. I am going to send him a link. Clearly, I'm going to have to edit this out of the podcast. We are going to dive into some Devy questions too, guys, because that is something that Fusue himself said that he really wanted to jump into, and I was hoping that I could get to that thing. So hold on. Oh, boy. With the audience that we have, these are the types of technical difficulties that we're going to run into. So, I just sent him a new link. He said he's going to reconnect. He said he's going to use the bathroom, and then he's going to try and reconnect in a bit. Fusue, we're live. The show is live. Oh, my God. You thought that question was disrespectful? I've never been disrespected like this in my entire life. I've never had a guest bail on me mid-show, then instead of frantically trying to reconnect, tell me that, hey, I got to go take a whiz. I'll be back. Why don't you just hang for a minute and go solo? What the fuck is going on right now? Oh, my God. Oh, my. He says, let me get back in. Yeah, please do get back in. Are you guys fucking kidding me? What is... Yeah, this doesn't happen on professional podcasts. Fusue is a legend. Fusue's such a legend that he literally mid-show tells me, hey, everything's going real well. Could be better. I'm going to go ahead and check out for a minute and go take a whiz. Catch you in about 10. Just can you fill for the dead air for me? Oh, Fusue. So he's going to try to check back in a minute. Yeah, no shit. It is Fu's world, and we're just living in it. It's so true. I mean, I've been holding the urge to go to the bathroom for, let me check the clock, 1 hour and 20 minutes and 38 seconds. This guy. This is unbelievable. Listen, all right, hey, to the crowd right now, before Fusue gets back in here, is there something you guys want me to ask Fusue about. Admittedly, this graphic is wrong, but this was supposed to be an opportunity for him to talk about Skyy more, because I know Fusue is a big fan of Skyy more, so I wanted to get his takes on it. Just hit the link and come back in. Unbelievable. I wish I had something here to show you guys to fill for time. Let's take super chat donation. My God, God bless you, that tall guy. Here's some money for the airtime. I appreciate it. I'm having fun. I love having guests like Fusue. I can tell you this before he comes back on here. Fusue was really nervous about doing this show. He kind of talked about how here he comes. Let's cut that back off. Let's bring him back in. Let's bring Fusue back in. Guest has themselves muted. Guys, while you're here and waiting, hit the like button for me. Let's drive this video to the top so everybody can see Fusue ghosting me on one of the more offensive levels that I've ever been ghosted on a podcast in my life. And I've done a few podcasts with a couple unsavory individuals. So anyways, guys, what's something you want me to pick Fusue's brain about? If you have Devi questions, feel free to shoot them in here. I know that's something that obviously it's in his... Okay, here we go. Fusue is joining. Answer the phone. And guest has themselves muted. This is not going well. This is the technical difficulty that I did not expect. Tyler, I'm not even sure if I can put that on the broadcast. I'm not sure if I can put that on the broadcast, but God damn it, Fusue. Left me out here to dry. Anyways, while we're waiting, here we go. Hold on. Third time we're connecting. Fusue, are you there? Can you hear me? It's fucking funny. From Earth, they can connect with the International Space Station in HD. And I can't get Fusue on an internet podcast about fantasy football. We're struggling. Oh, for the love of God. Hey, what's your guys' initial thoughts on ESPN's wide receiver performance model? Oh, that's good. That's something that we were talking about earlier. I would love to get Fusue on this show because I feel like the people deserve to hear him on there. So hang with me. We're going to get him on here. Okay, fourth time's the charm. Here we go. Wait for it. Yes, he's back. Fusue, are you trying to connect with like an iPhone 4 or something? What's happening? You know what's so funny? I told the chat I've never had a guest drop out from the show. And then I go, hey, dude, here's the link. Come back. We're live. And then go, yeah, be right back. Got to take a piss. Never had somebody do that. But hey, look, you're the guy. If anybody's going to do it to me.
I mean, my phone was like freezing anyway. So like, that caused it to like glitch up and freeze
fuck
up
it.
Anyway. So.
Went to the kitchen, got a Gatorade, had an Oreo. Check the score on the Yankees game, and here we are. We're back on a podcast. I was holding it down, the best that I could. Okay, it was Jon Snow. Sword came out. Whole shitload of guys coming. I did my best. So, all right, this will be the last question before we dive into one last thing. Nico Collins, and I don't know why this says Pickens. It's clearly not George Pickens for those of you guys that are aware of what's going on. No. Skyy Moore with 2 Ys, very cool. Between Nico Collins and Skyy Moore, I'm assuming based on tweets that I've read from you, you are heavily in the Skyy Moore side of this comparison.
Yeah. I'll take Skyy. It's not close.
You'll take Skyy and it's not close. Did you read this? Fusue is using the Starlink beta connection with the Motorola Razr.
Oh, God. No Kia.
Yeah, Nokia flip phone with Snake. Okay, so it's Skyy Moore and it's not close. Now I've seen you tweeting recently about Skyy Moore in particular, as he's a guy to buy in Dynasty. What is it about Skyy Moore's profile that you like so much?
He's almost like a carbon copy of Randall Cobb. Size wise, physically, the production, how he was used, like his yards after catch and stuff like that. And yeah, and Randall Cobb, his rookie year, he didn't play much. He didn't play much either. And then, the next 3 years, he kind of blew up, and he was mainly a slot guy, and Skyy's been playing the slot, so they're probably gonna keep him there.
I like the Randall Cobb take.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I haven't really heard anybody say the Randall Cobb thing. I think that's an interesting one. Yeah, to your point, you look back at, Skyy Moore through his time at college. He definitely played outside, in 2020. Obviously less targets that season itself, but they had kicked him into the slot for about 88% of his usage. But again, this is a guy that can play inside, can play outside. They believe he's a guy that's good after the catch. We've seen guys like MVS, who's been a pure field stretcher. I believe he was top 5 in ADOT for 3 consecutive years with Aaron Rodgers. Juju Smith-Schuster's on a 1-year deal. I mean, I'm not totally sold on the idea that he doesn't re-sign there, but with Travis Kelce continuing to get older, if Juju was to leave, I mean, it's very possible that that's your guy. That's your number one target right there. And in Dynasty right now, I believe his price tag is pretty suppressed, all things considered, because we've really not seen anything from him outside of 1 catch for 30 yards. So is he a guy that you would actively be going after in Dynasty?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So
Yeah, his price people probably sour on him, but yeah, it just depends on the price. Maybe some people might still value him highly anyway.
yeah, I think that it's really funny how we come into this year. He gets drafted by Kansas City. Obviously, that gives him an insane value boost. And then he doesn't really perform in 3 weeks of a 17-game season while surrounded by a ton of veteran talent on a ready-to-win-now roster. And people are suddenly like, well, what the hell? He must not be good if he's not playing. It's like, no, it's not that he's not good. He's just being boxed out by a lot of talented players that are proven veterans in this offense, and they're just trying to, again, it's pretty evident when you look at his particular snap share. I think, 20.9% is the most that we've seen from him thus far. So the opportunity is clearly coming, and he is a buy low candidate. Is he a guy that you would move off of Michael Gallup for? Is that easy for you, Michael Gallup at 26 years old?
Oh yeah, yeah, Gallup. That's an easy one.
Chase Claypool?
I Claypool. Oh yeah.
Jaylen Tolbert?
Tolbert definitely.
Jacoby Myers?
Yeah, Jacoby Myers. That's close, but because Jacoby's my guy, I like Jacoby a lot, but I'll take Skyy.
So that's about the line right there. So here's a question for you: Brandon Ayuk or Skyy Moore?
That's kind of tough.
That's right on the line.
They are kind of similar. They are kind of similar in that they're kind of like yards after catch guys. But I'll take the guy that's with Mahomes.
Okay. I mean, I think that's right?
Yeah.
I think that for me is part of the reason that I was a fan of Bateman in that scenario. I do like Lamar Jackson. I think we've seen the proven production. So I'm with you on it. So, and Skyy Moore is a guy that's incredibly versatile. So him versus Nico Collins for you is just no competition at all. I mean, do you like Nico at all?
Yeah, I did like him. I liked him, at the start of the season, but he hasn't exactly gotten a good target share, so that that dream is probably dead too.
Yeah. Again, they haven't really surrounded that team with any more weapons necessarily. I'm not totally out on Nico Collins. Again, this is a guy that 3rd round draft capital, so obviously that's kind of requisite for still getting productive outings. But again, he hasn't put up more than 10 points in any given game. His snap share has been above 68% every game, but I'm not sure that I never thought Davis Mills was the long-term answer either. So this could be an interesting situation with Houston going into next year. I just don't know what happens with this team and a quarterback in the future of this offense. I don't hate Nico Collins, but I'm with you. Skyy Moore should definitely be the pick here. So, all right, Fusue, let's do one dynasty trade, and then you wanted to talk a little Devy, or do you want to talk Devy right now? Do you want to try your hand at this dynasty trade, or do you want to talk some Devy right this very moment?
Oh, we could do the dynasty trade thing.
Let's do it, because I really want to run this bumper. Here we go.
Okay.
That's right. That's what we do on this show, Fusue. So, all right, here we go. So I got a dynasty trade for you. I'm not sure if this one's particularly difficult. I'm a fan of the wide receiver in this option. So here it comes, popping up on the screen right here. So we have got Cam Akers and a 2023 second-round pick, mid to late, I believe, or Christian Kirk, who we've seen really kind of go off here recently. So if you had to pick between these two players, Christian Kirk or Akers and a second, you can see down below here, it says the package with Akers, Christian Kirk, wait, that side over there.
No.
Which do you prefer?
I like Akers, the player, more, but I'll go with Kirk for fantasy.
Okay, and I don't think that's wrong at all, right? I think the performances that we've seen to this point in time are not a fluke. I mean, we're 3 weeks into the NFL season. If we can hate a player for underperforming by week 3, we can absolutely love a player for crushing it in week 3. It's so funny, right? Like it's like somebody can say 1,000 nice things to you, but it's that one negative thing they say to you that you remember. You don't remember 1,000 nice things. You only remember the one negative. So I'm with you. I think that Christian Kirk is more of the guarantee here. I think there's some concern with Akers. I'm actually concerned that Cam Akers ever really locks down the workload that we had hoped for him once upon a time. Again, even last week, which was his best week, prior to being basically buried by the dynasty community, it was a dead even 50-50 snap share split between him and Darrell Henderson. So it's really hard to say where he sort of falls in line in the future, but I'm with you. I think I'm Christian Kirk all day on this. So, all right, Fusue, here's what I want to do. Oh, let's go back to this one because it looks better. All right, so here's what I want to do, Fusue. I'm going to play the game. Now, for everybody in the audience that was here last week, they know, is this the one? It's none of these. They know that I had some issues with the programming, with the goddamn programming on this show to do the game. Now, for those of you guys watching, we've got a pretty good audience going right now. The way the game works, it's called 3rd and 20. Here's what I do. I ask you 3 questions. You have 20 seconds. If you get all 3 of them right, including the last question, exactly right, then you win $500 cash, which I'm going to reveal to you in one moment.
And he misses it. That's impossible. Oh, my God. That is impossible.
This remains the most overproduced show in fantasy football history, besides fantasy footballers, of course, lords of the game. So here's the deal, Fusue. I will send you the cash, the briefcase, a signed headshot, whatever it is that you need to make sure that I get this annual reoccurrence episode with you as I'm running over my headphone cables in here. This is a low-budget show as much as it feels high budget. Now, listen, I've had quite a few smart fantasy analysts come on this show, and to this point, Fusue, not one of them came close to winning this. But I believe you are the guy that's going to win. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to hit the button, start the clock. I'm going to ask you the first question, get 3 of them right in 20 seconds, and the cash is yours. Are you ready? Do you need a minute? Do you need to go take another whiz before we play the game? Did you only get like half of it out? Okay, you're good?
I'm fine.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Let's go.
All right, here we go. Do you wear a t-shirt in the pool?
No.
Okay, perfect. What is your mom's birthday?
My mom's birthday? I'm sad I don't remember my mom.
You know your mom's birthday. All right, go ahead. How many career receiving yards did Randy Moss have?
I don't know that one.
The money is safe yet again. The money, listen, I'm the outrage too. I'm not trying to lose my money on this show, for God's sakes. Fusue, so time has expired. Would you like to take a guess on how many yards? Chat, feel free to guess without looking it up. How many receiving yards did Randy Moss have in his career?
13, 12,000.
It's close. 15,292.
Okay.
Listen, Cody was in here. I got to show Cody speed answers only. He's right. When you started laughing about the t-shirts and the pool thing, you unfortunately cost yourself time. Now, admittedly, even if you had 50 seconds, I'm not sure.
I don't think it mattered. Wouldn't have gotten anything right.
I don't think you would have gotten it
I'm
right.
like, I knew it was like a turn for the worse after that first question. I'm like, never mind.
Everybody in the chat. Well, look, here you go. We got 14,982. Phil said 16. I don't think that's right, Phil. 15,328. Buzzard, come on. Are you fucking with me right now? You're off by only a little bit. That's the closest one, of course. Phil, 16. Okay, he corrected. 17,000 by Barry. No, a little over. On legendary performance by Fusue. Okay, so Fusue, I know you really wanted to talk some Devi. Would you prefer to kind of go over some of your favorite players, or do you want to take some questions from the crowd, Devi related?
I'll just
hit me with some of your favorite. Let's do that. Hit me with some of your favorite players.
Let's see. Let's see. My first tier, the wide receivers, it's Quentin Johnston, Kayshawn Booty. I think that's how he pronounces it.
Yeah, Booty.
Jackson Smith Jigba. So that's like my top three. They're kind of in the tier, but I mean Quentin Johnston is my guy. He's just like a freak of nature. Yards after catch, monster, breaking tackles. So I mean that's my guy. I get if someone has someone else about Booty number one or Jackson number one. I mean that's fine, Andy. I'm not going to argue with anyone. It's just Quentin Johnston. That's my guy.
Can I ask you a question about Johnston? Are you concerned about the logo on the helmet after we talked about Jalen Reagor earlier in this episode, or is this a whole new ball game?
No.
Okay.
It's a whole new ball game. Yeah, people's gonna bring that up, the media and whatnot. Just like they used to, see the USC receivers like that, and now you look at Pittman, St. Brown, and London. So, Quinn's gonna break the curse.
Right. Right. Well,
go
ahead. We've got obviously the crowd is split down the middle right now. So why is Quentin your number one? Because there's some people in here that are shocked that they didn't hear Jordan Addison in there or some other names. But with Johnston, let's talk about him. Why is he for you definitively your number one in this class?
Well, I like his size. He's what, 6'4", 212. He bulked up. I think he bulked up like 10 pounds this year. So he's huge, and he's one of those guys. He's gonna test well, and he's gonna, at that kind of athleticism shows up. The way his body control, his ball skills, he just hangs up in the air, and people are all excited about George Pickens, and I'm like, well, you know what? There's a better version of George Pickens next year.
Right.
He's gonna make some crazy catches too. So I mean, he might be a little bit rough around the edges, but I think just the upside is just immense.
So, well, I guess that's my question for you then, because, looking at the production out of him prior to this, no season over 600 yards. You look at this year, 3 games under 30 yards each. We've been caught in sort of the trap in the past with players that didn't produce at the college level, and we sold ourselves on the athleticism. Even guys like Michael Thomas, who we sort of said there's not enough production there because he had 750 or 800 yards. It doesn't need to be 1,400 yards, but when you're only getting 600 yards as a sophomore, you have no concerns about calling this guy number one. Now, I know you're certainly the guy that has bold rankings. Do you feel like right now, entering week 5, do you feel like this is bold, or do you feel like this is consensus for still some other people?
I think some other prominent people might have Quinn number one, or somewhere up there.
Okay.
But I mean, it's close between the three. It's kind of like just, pick your flavor. I think when it comes draft time, I'm probably gonna tell people, you could diversify, but he's just my personal favorite right now.
I mean, do you think that where do you think he goes in the NFL draft? Because, unlike a guy like Jamar Chase, who had one of the greatest statistical seasons of all time in college football and then took a year off, he was still drafted incredibly highly. Even if Johnston performs well at the NFL Combine, if his production isn't there, where do you expect him to be drafted? I mean, do you think he is a day two guy? I mean, and if he is a day two guy, are you still as confident? Obviously, this is a pre-draft ranking, but let's say that he ends up the fifth receiver off the board and he goes in the second round, or the seventh receiver off the board in the second round. Are you still going to feel like this is my guy, irrespective of everything else?
Yeah, I'm still gonna feel that way. I think ideally, he more likely he probably goes in the second round, like maybe high second round, like kind of like a T Higgins. Because even with T Higgins, he was my number two that year with Jaylen Rager.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had Higgins over, like Judy and Lamb. So I mean, and it turns out he's, right now he's better than them. So yeah. So
Yeah.
as at least second round is still pretty good capital.
No, it is great capital, but I feel like with Johnston's production as it stands today, it would be almost unprecedented for him to even potentially go in the second round. Like if he repeats 600 or less yards, I would have to go back and look at the history books. And I'm no historian, but I feel like that would be some unprecedented shit. But who am I to get in the way of a Fusue Vue take? All right. Talk to me. Who was your number two receiver in this class?
Number two, I'm gonna go with Kayshawn
Okay.
Booty.
And
Yeah.
and this seems to be another player who's kind of got some of his own situations going on as the year started. What is it you like about him?
Let's see. He's a physical player, so it's not like I think there's some kind of like I think there's some like pseudo alpha qualities, and I like his size. I think he's listed at 205 right now, so he might have bulked up, but we'll see. He's what, 6 feet, 190 pounds. So kind of like a Stephon Diggs almost. That's my current comp for him, like a Stephon Diggs.
Okay.
And yeah, we know the athleticism is there, so there's some yards after catch ability.
It's interesting with him too, because I mean, you couldn't have picked a player that sort of had a more similar situation where they were a favored player looking back a year or so. Coming into this year, performance has really dipped. You had some of the on-field / off-field stuff that was going on with him. Obviously plays at LSU. But again, is this a guy that we feel like we're going to be looking at come draft season, and maybe the athleticism's there, but if the performance metrics aren't there, he falls again like a project player, late second, third round? Because I'm struggling to come up with the way that either of these two guys sort of falls into the draft capital that maybe is being projected during this conversation. I can make the argument third round, possibly. I could see it. But you know what I mean? I'm just saying when I look at the performance metrics, but I get what you're saying on Kayshawn Bootsy. So that's your number two. You like him. Again, I'm not getting in the way of a Fusue take. You've been right way more times than I've been right on anything. But it doesn't scare you at all when we look at these two players and we see the underperformance. I mean, if we're not performing at the college level, what's the expectation of how we perform at the pro level, I guess? You just think that they have that raw talent profile?
Right. Yeah, I think so. It's just I think with LSU though, particularly that their wide receiver they have a good wide receiver room, so I think Brian Kelly's just comfortable using the others, and kind of forgetting about Kayshawn because maybe he's falling out of favor or who knows? There might be other issues. He's coming back. He was coming back from ankle injury too. So maybe he wasn't in the playbook or he wasn't practicing or there could be other stuff that we don't know about. So, but I mean, his first two seasons, he was pretty good. He shined. I think his freshman, he put up what? He had a 300-yard game or something like that. So, I don't think that 300-yard game as a freshman was a fluke.
No. And we had that breakout production, put him in the 98th percentile of breakout ages. So that's very valuable. That's important. That's certainly a metric that we look at and go, okay, this is one of the key indicators. It's that Brian Edwards level early age production, a guy that we keep following forever through the end of time and believe that the breakout is coming. Okay, Fusue, do you want to bring up your third receiver or do you want to move to running backs? Because I know that you've probably got some exciting running backs at the top of your list.
Oh, yeah, we can move on.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Running back one, it's Bijan
Okay.
Robinson.
And that's consensus, right?
Yeah.
That's consensus across everybody?
Right. That's consensus. If you don't have Bijan Robinson, then you need to find a new hobby.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard people, and it might have been Ray G. I've seen it floated a little bit, and there might have been some people before that. I don't know. Basically saying that Bijan Robinson is the Dynasty RB2 right now. That's what's being floated. Like, he's not in the pros, but he is the RB2 in Dynasty. Is that a really, really hot take? Because I think when we look at the running backs in the league right now, unless you're a fan of DeAndre Swift, who's, got injuries, got usage scenarios, or Javonte Williams, who we're just waiting for Melvin Gordon to disappear, is Bijan automatically RB2 in Dynasty?
Yeah, I think so. That's not a hot take at all.
Okay.
That's just that's kind of an obvious thing. Like, he should be no lower than RB3, and he could be as high as RB1.
Okay. Wow.
If you want.
Wow.
RB2. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Sounds
think it's
fair.
crazy, right? Because this could be one of those guys that would get a full feature workload at the NFL level, which has been a position that has slowly died. I mean, besides Najee Harris and even David Montgomery has had this role, believe it or not. He's been a guy that's had like a supreme level of usage. If this is one of those players that comes into the league and suddenly is a 70% snap share type player, which is something that's died. We only had 4 players last year, I believe, that had over 70% snap share. That's rare. If he's one of those guys, he becomes ultra valuable at the NFL level. And I'm assuming you don't see any reason why he can't be a 3-down, never come off the field type player.
Yeah, I don't see any reason. Like, just especially his receiving ability. It's just amazing. Like, he's just so fluid. When he's running his routes downfield, his catching ability, it just, I'd say it's at least, McCaffrey level, Kamara level. So just imagine Kamara and McCaffrey that's like 220.
Yeah.
That could handle more carry. You get the two-down running back and you get the receiving back. So that's the ultimate combo. He's a way better receiver than Jonathan Taylor. So basically, Jonathan Taylor's rushing workload and like McCaffrey or Kamara's receiving workload. So it's just unlimited.
Fusue, if I tip my camera down, I'm pitching a tent right now. This is like a romance novel that you're reading to me in real time. All right, so Bijan is consensus RB1, I think, for a lot of people. Right. So who's your RB2, and does your RB2 deviate from the groupthink of RB2s?
I mean, I think I get that question a lot, and I think RB2 is more like it's like a tier of like 4, 4, definitely 4. It could be another 5th guy. So, I don't think like there's a clear cut kind of guy, So I think in the mix there's Sean Tucker, Jahmyr Gibbs, Tank Bigsby, and Zach Evans. Those 4, yeah.
So we had somebody
I think
asking about.
I think those four can balance that out.
So, okay, so we had somebody in the chat asking about Sean Tucker. Is Tucker your number 2, or are you just kind of split right now? All those guys are kind of in a group and you're waiting for someone to separate themselves even a little more.
I think right now Tucker is kind of. I think he's the closest to like, number 2 objectively, because his receiving is up a little bit, and he still has that the rushing production. So overall, I think if we just look on paper, it's it's Sean Tucker, but I think there's an argument for one of the other guys as well.
Interesting.
But I think kind of Tucker by default would be just number 2, but I wouldn't you could say it's another one. Like, I wouldn't argue with someone that had someone else.
I see a message in the chat. I'm going to pull this up on the screen now. Obviously, I died. I lost like 7 of my 9 lives. The humans have 9. We'll find out. I lost a bunch of lives defending Clyde Edwards, but Jonah's Whale said, if Pacheco doesn't break out this year, Casey may be drafting a running back. I love the immediate leapfrog. I'll do it over my mic. The leapfrog right over Clyde Edwards, completely ignores him, but basically says if Pacheco doesn't break out, a 7th round guy, then they're going to go running back. If a guy like Tucker, and I don't know, because Clyde Edwards has played well, and I think if this persists, they would feel ridiculous doubling down on running back yet again. If he implodes, then I think there's a green light. But if it persists, hard to imagine. But if any number of these running backs that you have in tier 2 go to KC, I mean, is that an even bigger win? Or are we going to fall for the same game that I fell for with Clyde Edwards?
No, that's a definitely win. Any of those 4, for sure.
I got to tell you, it's going to be funny when everybody said, don't buy into Clyde Edwards-Helaire just because he's going to KC. But just despite Clyde Edwards-Helaire, when a guy gets drafted to KC, they're going to be like, great landing spot. KC was the spot. I can't believe he landed here. Going to be dominant. They're going to completely gloss over. You mark this shit down on a calendar. They're going to bring this up in the future. Okay, so you mentioned Sean Tucker. Who are some of the other guys that you had clustered in this group?
Jahmyr Gibbs, Tank Bigsby, and Zach Evans.
And of those 3, who's the guy that you feel like is the closest to being in that RB2 conversation as well?
Probably Jahmyr Gibbs. Just because, just because his receiving ability, but like as far as the rushing side, I don't think he had as much rushing production as the rest of the guys, but like just from a pure receiving, he's probably like the best, pure receiver, like kind of like a James Cook that's like early declare and yeah.
Well, I mean, but we've seen Bama running backs in the past not have the rushing volume or that, like Damian Harris. There was guys that were stuck behind Derrick Henry, like. Kenyon Drake, I guess, right? We've seen guys that now those players don't define what it means to be a running back that's, throttled in the offense or splitting work with somebody. But we've seen runners come out of Alabama and be successful runners at the NFL level, despite the fact that maybe the opportunity wasn't there. So I think that has gone away a little bit. I think that argument used to live in a prevalent way, but now I think people are like, look, it's Alabama. They've been doing this. We're not going to hold anything against him. So you do believe, though, that this is a guy that could be, one of the next guys, because we keep getting lighter, by the way. As we talk about these players, we're getting a little smaller from Tucker down to Gibbs, but this is a guy that's also great after contact. Do you have a comp yet? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have anybody that you kind of comp him to at 5'11", 200?
I kind of like a Austin Eckler. That's kind of like,
okay.
I think the closest guy, like in terms of like projecting how he might be used.
That would be wild.
More receiving. more receiving than rushing.
If that opportunity came, I mean, if that usage profile was indeed the case, I mean, that would be outstanding to see him get that opportunity to do that. So, but you believe obviously that he's a much better pure runner than Austin Eckler, because we've seen that's something that's been kind of taken away from Eckler or split in the past. So at his size, do you think that he's more of these guys that's going to be a high upside, committee back somewhere? Because as we're seeing with the NFL, it's hard for guys of this size and weight to succeed full time. But like you said, in an Aaron Jones role, in an Eckler role, in one of these dynamic roles, they have more value than some of the pure runners in a backfield that aren't touching, opportunity. So you think that even in that role, this is still just a high upside player?
Yeah, I think, high upside, probably more high floor because of his receiving.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm with you, man. He's a player that I've heard a lot about, that a lot of people are fans of. I think he's, again, one of these consensus players that sits up at the top because the profile is so diverse despite, where he's playing. All right. How about this? Give me one player that you're a fan of that probably most people aren't, that you think at the NFL level could perform better than expectation. I mean, I would say Quentin Johnson is possibly that guy right now because of the way that he's been playing. But who's a player that you feel like you're on? I know this wasn't on the show sheet. I'm filibustering for you right now. Do you have a player in mind that you're a fan of that maybe most people are not?
I got a guy. How about the Georgia wide receiver? Lad McConkey. There you go.
Okay, and this is a guy.
No, I didn't make up that name. He's real.
Okay.
He's real. No.
And this is somebody that right now.
Him. Yeah.
What's
him.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely him.
So that's your deep player right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he shouldn't be deep though. He plays for Georgia.
Right.
So I mean, but I don't hear a lot about him.
Right.
Whether it's among college fans or the Debbie talk, even draft talk. Like, come on. Okay. Talking about this guy.
Well, you are the grinder of Debbie. I mean, again, it's in your name on Twitter. And yeah, listen, man, I don't want to keep you going. We've been going a long time, Fusue. We said we were only going to go an hour and a half. We went 2 hours, man.
Oh, that's fine. We had more to talk about. Yeah.
We had the tune-up episode. I really appreciate it, Fusue. I want to make sure that I don't hold you up all night. I appreciate the Debbie takes. I know a lot of people follow you on Twitter. Hopefully more people will follow you on Twitter after this episode. Where can people find you on Twitter? Is there anything you do that's premium content, or is everything you do free content on Twitter right now?
Everything's just on Twitter, and just if you like it, support me, retweet, Venmo me, PayPal me.
Yeah, do it, man. And you told me secretly, we're not going to get into it too much, but there may be a cool opportunity for you possibly in the future. I'm not going to jinx anything, but there may be some cool stuff in the field of football possibly coming your way, and we might see Fusue at a greater capacity doing some pretty cool stuff in the football space. Is that true?
Maybe, hopefully.
We'll see what happens. Well, I look forward to it, man. Again, I just want to say you're one of the people that I kind of came up with at the same time. I've always appreciated the fact that you didn't go with groupthink. I always appreciated the fact that you really supported your work, using data points, using, knee bend graphs with charting the angle of knee inflection.
Oh.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think you did. But anyways,
like that.
you go out on a limb, you take big swings. We all miss, but you're right a hell of a lot more times than you're wrong, and I can't say that enough, man. So I really do appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Okay.
At Devi, I don't know how to say it. This is impossible. Yusuf.
Yusuf.
It's
Yusuf or Yusuf?
It's Fusue backwards, okay? We'll just simplify it. Devi Fusue.
Yusuf like you're
Yeah, there you go. Like Europe. I keep saying that. I just don't see the connection. All right. Well, dude, you've been fun. I really appreciate it. I know you said that you were little unsure coming on tonight. Hadn't done a podcast in a while, but man, I think you got loose. We had some fun. Aired out some takes on the people, and I'm sure we'll get some good response about this. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Shout outs to everybody that stayed in the chat for 2 straight hours with us. That was fun. It's hot as hell in here.
2 hours.
I'm sure I've got to go to the bathroom now. I've been holding it like a fucking astronaut in a diaper. It's time for me to go take care of business. Shout outs to everybody. Thank you so much in the chat, guys. Hit the like button on your way out. Really appreciate that. Trying to shove this show right back into the algorithm's face on YouTube. And again, Fusue, man, you are a legend in the space. I can't wait to see you do more stuff. I really hope some opportunities come your direction, dude. You're a hard worker, and credit to you, man, for all the time you've put in. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I'll be back next week. We're going to do some really wild shit. It's going to be a good time. So see you guys next week on I Am Outraged.